Icebreaker ideas for face-to-face with social distancing, hybrid, Hyflex, and online, synchronous and asynchronous. All those in today's video. Hey there, this is Erica from Ever Educating, and this channel is for new college instructors or teachers interested in teaching ideas or tips. Now today I'm focusing on an icebreaker idea for each of those different scenarios as I mentioned in the intro. I have a whole playlist with icebreaker ideas, right? So if you want more of them, there's more for different scenarios. But in this case, I'm only doing one for each, so it's just one video to watch to get an idea depending on the situation that you're in. So for face-to-face, how do you get them to start getting to know each other, getting to know them as well? I recommend using Kahoot for this because it records their answers, but that doesn't matter to you, you can do this verbally as well. But if you're using Kahoot, and again I have a tutorial link below, what you're going to do here is you're going to have a list of icebreaker questions and then multiple choice answers for them as well. And they're going to enter into the Kahoot game and you'll ask them, for example, of the following, which is your favorite genre? And you might have A is romance or drama, B is horror or mystery, C is sci-fi or fantasy, D is, something else, right? And so they answer the question and then you can see immediately on Kahoot how many chose each answer. So you have, okay, well, of these four, we had 15 of you out of 30 said that it was sci-fi and fantasy. Let's talk about it. What's your favorite sci-fi movie, sci-fi book, etc., video game, right? And you have a discussion about that answer, start people getting to know each other. And then you move on to the next question. Our next question is this. Here are the multiple choice answers. They choose, and again, you stop and discuss. So it's very simple, right? And you can use this form of activity for anything. But I recommend it for an icebreaker, especially if you use questions that connect to the class that you're actually teaching. So in my case, when I'm teaching literature, it's good to know what their favorite genre is for when I find like small short stories or poems or anything like that from the watch. If I know that 15 of my 30 students love sci-fi and fantasy, might as well find that for one of my class examples. Okay? So you might have class collecting topics, or it can just be fun icebreaker questions. This activity is one of the ones I mentioned in my Hyflex collection down below of activity ideas for those of you teaching in Hyflex, but it can work for everybody being face-to-face in the classroom, or of course it can work in the Hyflex classroom. Okay, so moving on to that, this again is an activity you can do for the Hyflex, but then I want to give you a different one as well. And this is the one that I mentioned in my video about the best icebreaker for Hyflex. I experimented last semester. And so here I call it Me Too, right? Or I Am Too. And it's very simple. So you have some students in person, you have some students on Zoom, and you're starting it off and you say a statement about yourself that's true. I am left-handed. Anybody in your class who's also left-handed will say me too. Verbally aloud when they're in person, but on Zoom, they can just type in me in the chat really quickly. So it makes it easy for them to participate really quickly. That's the key thing here, rather than writing out long things. So you have, let's say, 8 of them say me too. So I say, Sarah, you're next. Say a statement about yourself, and then anybody else who has that truth as well will say me too. So Sarah says, I was born in Puerto Rico. And we have 2 others who say me too, one in class, one on Zoom. So now you as a teacher can facilitate it more easily. So you can kind of alternate. Say, okay, John, who's on Zoom, you're next. And so he makes a statement, and so on and so on. I found this great because it can happen very easily in the Hyflex form. And you could also pause, right? Similarly to the first activity, and have a discussion. All right, when I asked how many people are left-handed, or when I said that I'm left-handed, you end up having 10 out of 20, that's unusual, right? They can talk about left-handedness, right? And how annoying using scissors are and all that jazz. So you can pause and discuss, or you can use it as a quick activity to start getting to see similarities in your classmates, right, for the students, so they can start getting to know each other and creating friendships. Now, what about hybrid? So not Hyflex, just regular hybrid where they have class in person one day and the other days it's fully online. Okay, so there's not that synchronous nature of it when you have people on Zoom and in the classroom at the same time, right? It's just regular hybrid. What can you do? Well, you can do an asynchronous version of the Kahoot game. It is an option on Kahoot, but to change it up a bit, I recommend going here and just relying on the discussion forums instead. Because in this case with hybrid, they will meet each other in person at times, and then they'll be able to discuss, fully online. You can have breakout rooms on Zoom, right, to get them to know each other with class activities. But to start with, an icebreaker that I think could help would just be doing some kind of discussion forum on your LMS. And if you need LMS tutorials, I have Canvas ones linked below, along with one about Sakai as well. Okay, but in this case, what kind of online icebreaker for discussion forums? It really depends on your preference. One that I got a lot of positive feedback on from fellow teachers in my online icebreaker idea video is the one that involves music. So having students create a playlist for the discussion forum. So maybe you might have, okay, list your top 10 songs of all time in this discussion forum. And then you as the instructor can actually create this playlist, let's say on Spotify, right? And maybe you use it during class activities. Maybe there's quiet time when they do some independent work. You might have them play the favorites playlist that they created themselves for this icebreaker. Or you might have, our class is about anthropology, right? If you were an anthropologist, right, who was coming to the US for the first time, and now you had to find out, like, what is music like in the era of the 21st century, or maybe the era of the 1990s or the 1970s. What songs do you think you should be shown by an American, right? And so kind of putting yourself in the mindset of the class topic and have, okay, well, if you were an anthropologist who was exploring the 1970s, these are the 5 songs that everybody should have told you about for the 1970s. Okay, so you can make it a fun activity in that way, but I recommend this music element because I think students will find it fun and interesting, whether it's just what's your favorites or actually doing like thinking of your class connection. Okay, so that's one I recommend, though again, I do have others in that other video. But moving on to fully online, as I mentioned, right? So obviously that will work as well, discussion forum, icebreakers. But I think for online, if you're doing asynchronous, then I do recommend using Flipgrid, because that's a great way of creating community with video or at least with audio, because there is the ability to do like a podcast version where you don't see the face, or you can even just pixelate the face so they don't see each other if they're concerned about their privacy. But I think it could be really helpful for students to get to know each other, visually. But with Flipgrid, you can have, okay, well, it's pre-recorded, so you can practice, you can do as many takes as you need to. Go ahead, here's a list of questions that I want you to just kind of answer as an icebreaker, but I want you to be on camera if possible. If not, at least with your voice, so we can get to know you personality-wise. I think it comes across a lot clearer when you have the video or the audio versus just typing it out on a discussion forum. So if it's asynchronous in particular, right, then I do think this is great because it's a way for them to get to know each other a bit more than just in writing, okay? Now, if you're doing synchronous, then of course there's the opportunity at least that they will see each other on the webcam when they're doing their Zoom or the Google Meet calls. But again, you can have this element if you want to with the Flipgrid game or even the Kahoot game. But again, I want to keep it a bit different to have different ideas for all of these. So in this case, I really like the class bingo game, which I've mentioned before in various resources. But here, it's basically you have a list of bingo questions and they curate their little bingo card and you play the game, right? So in my case, if I'm teaching children's literature, maybe I have the prompts are, best Disney villain, best Disney character, best children's book, best young adult book, and so on and so forth. They kind of fill out the boxes in their bingo card answering these prompts. But then you have, okay, once you've answered all these prompts, now we're gonna pick out random numbers with these. So round number 10, the 10th prompt is best, Disney villain, right? What were your answers, right? So they mark it on the card, so they can try and create bingo, but then you have a discussion. The best villain is this one. No, it's that one. Well, what about this one? And you have a class discussion, get to know each other while playing bingo, which I always find to be a very fun game. Now, it doesn't have to be a class-themed bingo prompt list if you don't want it to be, but it can be, right? And again, this is one of those activities that I mentioned in my free workbook about designing a class, a college course, and also in my Hyflex collection of resources as well, which I'll link below for you if you're interested. But again, class bingo, I find to be a lot of fun, and it can happen if they're all online synchronously. It's harder when you're doing Hyflex, and it really doesn't work well if it's asynchronous. Face-to-face can work as well if they're all, there in person. But, it's just one of the ones where I think it's a more time-consuming icebreaker, and I think it kind of works better for online, where there's that extra distance that you're trying to close a gap. I think a fun game like bingo can really help with this. Again, I have a whole playlist of icebreaker ideas linked below. If you found this video helpful, please do click like, maybe share it with your fellow teachers, subscribe if you haven't already, and go ahead and check out the other resources I have for you, along with more icebreaker ideas.